And welcome back, everybody, to another deck profile here on the Francisco Ferreira Vlogs channel. And today's deck profile is not going to be branded, even though there is an update coming up for that very soon. But instead, we're actually going to be having one that I've been working on for a little while. I do still think that it requires some tweaking, but as it is, I think that this is actually a really fun deck to play. So I've been going with the Red Dragon Archfiend structure deck, and I've been messing around with that lately. And while it hasn't been necessarily my favorite deck of all time, I really like how it plays, and I think that it is incredibly consistent. So this is a very nice addition to the TCG, and particularly to budget players, so we're going to have a look at that in just a moment. So let's actually get straight into this. Now, just so that everybody knows, I did not build this deck for myself, but I'm actually hoping after this deck profile to be able to give this away to one of my friends, so that, you know, it's because Yu-Gi-Oh! Is already a hard enough game to get into if you're somebody that's not already into the game. So I want to be able to give this to somebody so that they can say, hey, well, I guess I don't have to spend all of this money on getting a playable deck. So yeah, hopefully this will become some kind of incentive. So I will be giving this away along with this playmat to a friend so that they can enjoy playing some Yu-Gi-Oh! As well, and maybe even make something more out of this deck. Now with that said, let's actually go ahead and jump right into it, beginning with the main deck. So first things first, we're going to be jumping in with triple Soul Resonator over here. So Soul Resonator is going to be the heart of this deck essentially, because this is going to be the main tuner that you're going to be working with. It does have an adding effect whenever he is normal or special summon. That is fairly easy to do either one of those in this deck. So you can add yourself a Fiend monster from your deck to your hand, except another Soul Resonator, of course, but this opens up the playing field for you to be able to add yourself a bunch of different monsters. And there's also a secondary effect in the graveyard that's a protection effect, which I really appreciate, and I think that it is really good to have because this thing will be in the graveyard very often. Then we have Vision Resonator as well. So Vision Resonator is going to be another card that will allow you to just give yourself an additional special summon to be able to synchro summon with it. You will probably synchro summon with this card more often, if anything. So do keep that in mind, that in some ways this card could be maybe just a little bit better than Soul Resonator, but you can search this card with Soul Resonator, so in a way, you actually do have a lot of great things going with this. So you would use another monster to synchro summon with Soul Resonator after being able to search for this card with Soul Resonator, and then you would summon Vision Resonator by having a level 5 or higher dark monster on the field, and you can synchro summon again with it. I think it's really sweet. So Vision Resonator does make things even easier. Now, another one is going to be Crimson Resonator. This is actually a pretty good card, but I find that he is better just to have at one. And then one Synchron Resonator, same deal. Even though you will not be able to resolve Red Rising Dragon's effect necessarily, the second effect, because we're only running one. So I'm actually considering running multiple copies of Synchron Resonator, or maybe just a different Resonator card that is at least a level 1 tuner. So that's something to keep into consideration for the future as I continue to improve upon this deck, or if I end up giving it away before that even happens. Then next, we've actually got triple copies of Supai Dusk Walker. I'm thinking of dropping this down to 2 copies because you technically really only need 2. So, because this card, once you summon her, she can actually bring another copy of herself out. So you would have 2 level 5s out on the field. Some people would argue, hey, well, this would be great for XZ summoning, but it would be far too convenient for that. So they had to nerf the card, of course, so that you can only do synchro summoning. But this card is really good for being able to bring out some extra materials to allow you to synchro summon with them. So I don't really have too many complaints about this card, except that maybe 3 copies might be too many, so I might just drop it to 2, to be completely honest, because after you get that second one, you don't really have too much to do with that third copy. So I think that maybe dropping this down to 2 might be the way to go. Then you've got Wandering King Wild Wind over here. This card is also really good, probably even better than Supai. He can special summon himself from the hand as well, and allow for some pretty awesome synchro plays. And it doesn't hurt that his stats are actually pretty good at around 1700 attack. So I like running him. Now, as for the rest of the monsters, we're running a bestial package, so double Lubellion. I do not think that 3 is going to be necessary, especially considering that we're only running 1 of each of the other bestials, minus that one other bestial, the least relevant one. But we've got Bestial Magnamut for searching, we've got Bestial Druisworm for removal, and we've got Bestial Saronir for additional searching, but this time of other spells and traps, not really so much for Bestials. But this is going to be our Bestial package pretty much summed up. Then we've got triple Ash Blossom to run out the monster lineup, and I think that this is a pretty solid lineup, if I do say so myself. I kind of wish that there was more room for more synchro-based monsters, but you can definitely make that room, for example, if you replace Supai for something else. So that's just an option, but otherwise, I do really like this lineup, and I think that it works really well, especially with Lubellion. You get to trigger a lot of continuous traps from your deck that you're going to need, that you're ultimately going to want. So that's going to be it for the monster lineup. Now let's move on to the spells. For the spells, we have triple Pot of Prosperity. Unfortunately, as of the release of this video, the Rarity Collection for the 25th anniversary of Yu-Gi-Oh! Has not quite released. There have been some box openings. Those have been sponsored though, which means that they're not really available to the general public quite yet as of the releasing of this, which is why we're running on Prismatic Pot of Prosperities. So naturally, what I would do instead is just go with the super rares, considering that. But this is what we have at the time of release, so this is what I decided to go with. But Prosperity is super good because we're running several copies of multiple cards in our extra deck, so this card is super handy, and it's not so much a matter of, oh my gosh, am I getting rid of something that I'm really going to need later, because that's not going to be too much of a problem with this extra deck that we've got lined up. So Prosperity is super good in this deck. Then we've got double triple Tactic Silence. Some people might argue Pot of Desires might be a better choice if you just want to draw 2 cards, but oftentimes hand traps are just going to be a thing. So this is going to allow you to just go, boom, place it on the field, and then draw yourself 2 cards or take control of another monster to use that for synchro summoning, if you can. So I think that triple Tactic Silence is just a better choice over Pot of Desires here. And we've got Resonator Call. You're going to want to add yourself those Resonators. We're not running too many Resonators in this deck, which is why having the ability to search as many of them as possible is really good. So triple Resonator Call is the way to go. And then we've got Crimson Gaia. Of course, this card is a pretty good card, I would say, because it supports the idea behind Red Dragon Archfiend for sure, for being able to place those other monsters in defense position and then getting that destruction effect. Also, during the main phase, you can add 1 Red Dragon Archfiend or 1 card that mentions it from your deck or graveyard to your hand, which I think it's really good for being able to recur some of those resources. Now we've got 1 Call by the Grave to be able to stop some of those hand traps. So do remember, you do still want to be able to protect yourself as much as possible. And then Foolish Burial, because you do want to see some of those monsters in the graveyard already, so you want to be able to do a little bit of dumping there. Now that's it for the spells. Let's go ahead and move on to the traps. For the traps, we've got triple Infinite Impermanence. So this is going to be fairly obvious. This is one of the most powerful hand traps out in the game at the moment. So you want to be able to play this if you can, especially if you're running other traps, you might as well. But this is just a great hand trap to have around. It's an effect veiler that you can set on the field and then prepare for your opponent later on. Then we've got Red Zone. Red Zone, you really only need 1 copy of it because you can actually go ahead and just set it directly from your deck onto the field with Lubellion anyway. But it is great to be able to search this card with other monsters that you have that will allow you to do that kind of searching anyway. Because this card is so easy to get a hold of, you really only need 1 copy of it. Then we've got Etude of the Branded. Etude of the Branded is just another way of being able to synchro summon into other things. For example, you do get locked into synchro summoning dark monsters, which obviously is going to keep you from being able to synchro summon something like Baron de Fleur. So, unfortunately, we are going to still want to play something like Baron de Fleur, but because you're oftentimes going to get locked in, Etude of the Branded is going to allow you to synchro summon during your opponent's turn. So this is why you want to run this, and it's searchable with Saronir as well. So yes, by all means. And it's also a way of being able to banish monsters or just cards in general from either graveyard. Then we've got Branded Beast for our final trap card, because we do run the bestial package, so we might as well, since we do have the room in this deck. It does allow for you to tribute one of your own bestials and being able to destroy 1 card in your opponent's side of the field, which is a really useful effect. So that's it for the traps. And that's it for the main deck in general. So we're going to move on to the extra. There's going to be no side for us to show off this time around. But hey, we do have a pretty cool extra deck to show off regardless. So we got Tyrant Red Dragon Archfiend. This is a super cool level 10 monster that usually goes along with the actual theme of Red Dragon Archfiend. So this is really cool. And it is one that is actually pretty easy to make in this deck. But because it is a level 10, you might come across some challenges. But he's not the only level 10 that we run in this deck. Then we run triple Red Rising Dragon. This is going to be the main monster that you're going to be making and the one that you're going to be sending off with Prosperity as well. Because in technicality, you don't really need 3. But because of Prosperity, you might as well run 3. So it allows you to target a Resonator monster in your graveyard and then just being able to special summon it. So essentially you make him to be able to synchro summon with him again, which is super useful, super handy, will definitely has been a very good effect to go into, as a matter of fact. So you are going to want to run 3, no exceptions. Double Red Dragon Archfiend. Red Dragon Archfiend is what this deck runs on, essentially, so he should be our main monster, but he just isn't normally what you will want to go with unless you've got Gaia Force on the field. But really, ultimately, you want to go with the Red Rising, and then maybe go into Red Dragon Archfiend afterwards, but I find that going into Scarred Dragon Archfiend instead just makes more sense, because you can then go into Red Dragon Archfiend. And I think that that's really the play that you want to go with the most. Kind of sucks that we didn't actually get an ultra rare printing, considering that this is the card on the front of the structure deck. But hi, either way, what matters is the utility of the card. Then we've got 1 Red Supernova Dragon, still something that you can make. So the rest of the monsters that we're going to have here is just because you can make them and they can come in handy, but you don't depend on them to win games necessarily. But they can be your win conditions from time to time. So Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity, Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. So getting used to the naming conventions of this deck. Red Nova Dragon as well. Got 1 Kui Belt, the Blade Dragon. This is going to be a more recent addition, if anything. So we've got that going. You got 1 Bestial Disbatter, because why not? We are running on the Bestial package already. And this card is insane, actually. So yeah, Bestial Disbatter for sure. And then lastly, we've got Baron de Fleur to round out our extra deck package here. Only synchros, because you get locked into synchro summoning anyway, and this is the only non-dark synchro monster that we're running as well in this deck. Now with that said, that's pretty much everything that I've got to show off here for the stock profile. Now if you do have any suggestions whatsoever, then please make sure to leave them in the comments. I'm always open to suggestions and to making changes to these decks. If you think that I should change anything out before I give this away to one of my friends, then please let me know, because I would really love to know if there's anything that I could do to make the experience better for others. So with that said, this has been Francisco from Francisco Ferreira Blogs. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon with either the 25th Anniversary Rarity Collection case opening, or you can see me with another branded opening. Well, no pun intended there, just another branded deck profile. But with that said, until next time, enjoy.